This is Unit 2.2. We're going to talk about how to write an equation in slope-intercept form from graphs and coordinates. So you'll see that we talked about this in 2.1, that y equals mx plus b for slope and the y-intercept. And on my notes, if you are in my class for exercise 1, those notes are kind of filled in for you already. But what you want to do for part A, it's determine an equation for y equals mx plus b. So if you have a graph, you want to pick a couple of the points on the graph, and you can find the slope by going from the point on the left to the point on the right. So it's rise and run. So in this case, we have to go up 3 spaces, and then we go right 2 spaces. So that means our slope, which I'll refer to as m, is 3 over 2. 3 up and 2 to the right. Now if I went down, it'd be a negative value. And then the y-intercept b is right here at positive 2. So b is 2. So if I'm writing my equation out, this is going to be y equals 3/2 x plus 2. And they want us to test our equation for the value of x equals 2. So to test it, what we're going to need to do is we're going to plug in the number 2 in our equation and see if the y value we get out matches the y value on the graph. So I'm going to take my calculator, and I'm going to type in this expression on the right side of the equal sign, which in this case will be 3 divided by 2 parentheses 2 plus 2, which I get 5. So that means that the y value should equal 5 when x is 2. And if I go to the coordinate that I wrote down earlier here, that is the coordinate 2, 5. So it does check. Now on the next one, similar to what we just talked about. Now, the only difference is for this one, I can figure out 2 points. And I'm going down 1 and right 3. So that means my slope is negative 1/3. But I don't have a y-intercept that's a whole number. It's kind of in between. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the equation of a line formula, which is on one of my whiteboards in the room. But I'm going to use this to figure out what that y-intercept value is going to be, because it'll allow me to write the equation. So I'm going to take one of my points, which in this case I'll take negative 1, 2. So I have an x value and a y value. I'm going to write it in with those values in. So I got y minus 2, and then I got negative 1/3, and then I have x. And because there's a minus sign and a negative 1, it's going to turn out to be positive. So I'm going to distribute. I get negative 1/3 x minus 1/3. And then from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the 2 to the negative 2 to get y by itself, which we talked about in the last assignment. And then I have to add the 2 to the negative 1/3. So I'll take my calculator for that, and I'll go ahead and type in, we got negative 1 divided by 3 plus 2, and then I'll use the math key and convert it back to a fraction. So we have 5/3, positive 5/3, which the y-intercept b would be equal to 5 over 3, which ends up being like right between 1 and 2, 1.666 repeated, kind of like you see on the calculator. So here's my equation, and I can always use this, and we'll use it in some of the other examples to help us figure out the slope and the y-intercept values. So having said that, I'm going to erase this and go to the back of this page. And what we're going to do right now is you'll see there's notes for exercise 3A already on the paper, if you have one of my copies. And then we're going to do B together. Now we need to have 2 coordinates to use our equation that we just talked about, because those two coordinates will help us find slope, which we'll do first, and then from there we can use one of the coordinates and the slope to write the equation. So I'm going to start first by writing out my coordinates, and we're going to find that average rate of change between those two. So in this case, bottom minus top, I got 2 minus -2, which would be 4. And bottom minus top again, 3 minus 5 would be -2. So I get -2 divided by 4, which becomes -1/2. And again, you take the calculator and put that in, see if it will reduce. So I know my slope, my m value is -1/2, which I'll put here. And then I'm going to take one of the points. I'll take the second point because it's got no negatives in it, 2, 3. So we got y minus 3, and then x minus 2. So you want to distribute first. You get -1/2 x. Now when you put this in the calculator, you're going to have -1/2 times -2, which would be +1. And then to finish the problem, you want to add 3 to each side. So adding 3 to the 1 will give you the equation. You get -1/2 x plus 4. That's our equation. Our slope is -1/2, and the y-intercept is 4. So as you try the other examples, again, same thing. First thing you want to do, you want to start with the rate of change, and then you can use that and one of the points to write the equation down.